All right, Shapiro, let's keep it down back there. Good evening. Welcome to the November 8th regular monthly meeting for the Lynbrook Board of Education. If we can all please rise. Mr. Pileski will lead us in the pledge. Roll call, Terry. Everyone is here but Mrs. Marcus and Mr. Murray. I will deal with them later. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of the October 11th, 2023 regular meeting? Mr. Pileski, Mr. Lunar, all in favor? May I have a motion to accept the minutes of the October 16th, 2023 special education section? Mrs. Argona, Mrs. Danino, all in favor? Mr. Kunz, our gallery.
The Burns-Siderman Gallery is proud to present the November show featuring the first marking period work from Mr. Lentini's Studio Art students. Studio Art is the foundation high school art class. In this class, students learn the fundamental principles that are common to all future art curriculums. Drawing techniques are explored to strengthen the students' ability of expression, and students are introduced to a variety of materials including pen and ink, pastels, and a variety of paint mediums. On the two front walls are small scratchboard portraits and drawings of hands. For this project, the students demonstrated their knowledge of hatching and cross-hatching techniques to render their drawings. On the left wall are silhouette landscape paintings in watercolor and acrylic paint, and monochromatic self-portraits. The monochromatic self-portraits that continue around the back wall are painted with tints and shades of one color, and the negative space is painted with the complementary color of the portrait. Pairing the complementary colors together helps to make the portrait pop from the background. On the right wall are Zen doodles. A Zen doodle is a type of abstract drawing that uses looping, curving lines and shapes to create complex graphics. Zen doodling involves drawing designs using structured patterns or Zentangles. Unlike traditional drawing, Zen doodling does not focus on figurative elements. Rather, it is about the process of creativity. The Studio Art students are off to a great start this year. We hope you take a moment to enjoy their incredible work. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kunz. We have a tenure resolution tonight. If Lauren Western could please stand up. Special education teacher at South, I'm going to read your resolution. Be it resolved that upon the recommendation of the Superintendent of Schools of the Lynbrook Union Free School District, Lauren Western, who is completing her probationary period, whose service, it's yes, I know he's saying it's gonna be yes, whose services have been found to be competent, efficient, and satisfactory, be appointed in the tenure area of special education effective December 8th, 2023, in accordance with the provisions of Section 3012 of the Education Law. May I have a motion to accept the tenure resolution for Lauren Western? Mr. Pileski, second, Mrs. Danino. All in favor? Congratulations. Now we know why she wanted tenure so bad. Ms. Wes, you're free to leave to celebrate. You don't have to stay. No, thank you. It's going to take her 10 minutes to get them all out of here. So, good morning, Kindergarten Center. Boy, do I remember that so vividly. Mrs. Michelini, can you please stand up? And I thought I had my time in Lynbrook. Whereas, Mrs. Andrea Michelini, senior stenographer at the Kindergarten Center, has announced her intention to retire effective January 26, 2024, after 38 years of service to the students, administration, and faculty of the Lynbrook Union Free School District. And whereas Mrs. Andrea Michelini began her career at Waverly Park Elementary School in November 1985, then moved over to West End Elementary School as a clerk typist for the following 10 years. In 1995, Mrs. Michelini made the best decision ever when given the opportunity to embark on a new adventure by moving to the happiest place on earth, the Lynbrook Kindergarten Center, as it opens its doors for the first time. For the past 28 years, Mrs. Michelini has been the Lynbrook Kindergarten Center's leading lady. And whereas Mrs. Andrea Michelini is one of the most important assets to the running of the Kindergarten Center. I mean, I have no idea how this place is going to run without her, by the way. It could not function, exactly, Bozeman. It could not function without her constant assistance and guidance. Mrs. Michelini's upbeat disposition and expert level of knowledge keep the office on track by prioritizing tasks and knowing the most efficient way to accomplish them. She is always one step ahead of her daily activities and upcoming school events. Mrs. Michelini patiently manages issues presented to her by the children, teachers, and parents. Her polite interactions, and I cannot tell you how polite this woman is, beyond. Her polite interactions help set the tone for the entire building. And whereas Mrs. Michelini is not only the secretary at the Lynbrook Kindergarten Center, overseeing all the administrative work, she also oversees Power School, the registration process and transportation for the entire kindergarten student population. During the summer months, you can always find Mrs. Michelini coming in and out of the Kindergarten Center, working diligently in her office, making sure that all new registrations are finalized, supplies are ordered and distributed, purchase orders are paid, and meticulously preparing the summer mailing for our new kindergarten students. Mrs. Michelini is our Wonder Woman, taking care of absolutely everything for the smooth running of the school. Whereas you can always hear Mrs. Michelini's laughter throughout the school hallways. Her energetic personality, interesting and insightful stories, and knowledge are constantly being shared with her colleagues. Mrs. Michelini always calls her staff angels, but she is their angel, taking care of them and guiding them throughout their school days. And whereas Mrs. Michelini is not all work and no play. In 1983, she began her artistic roller skating endeavors at Hot Skates in Lynbrook. Taking this hobby very seriously, Mrs. Michelini continues to wake up early every Sunday morning to skate with her trainer at Roller Magic in South Amboy, New Jersey, to prepare for her many artistic roller skating competitions. I'll let you in on a little secret. Mrs. Michelini has spent many afternoons skating down the hallways at the Kindergarten Center. Always on the move, you may catch Mrs. Michelini walking around the north end of town during her evening strolls or participating in bar classes through Lynbrook Public Schools' continuing education program. Whereas Mrs. Michelini grew up in Lynbrook and graduated Lynbrook High School in 1966. She loved Lynbrook so much, when she married her late husband, Peter, they established residency in Lynbrook and raised both sons, Peter and Andrew, here. Mrs. Michelini will now be able to spend more time with both Peter and her daughter-in-law, Dana, taking trips to visit her granddaughter, Ava, at Marist, and grandson, TJ, at Oneonta. Mrs. Michelini will also be able to spend more time with her son Andrew and cheering on her granddaughter Morgan as she plays soccer, and quality time cooking and baking with her twin grandchildren Aubrey and Andrew. Mrs. Michelini is also looking forward to spending time with her gourmet luncheon group and family during holiday and birthday celebrations. Whereas the time has come for Mrs. Michelini to say goodbye to her friends and family at the Kindergarten Center. Her contagious laughter and bright smile will remain with us forever. Mrs. Michelini was the foundation that started the Kindergarten Center, and over the past 28 years, continued to be open-minded as times changed and learned to be flexible with the most wonderful educators, families, and children who respect and admire her for her determination and commitment to making the kindergarten so special. Everyone loves you. Mrs. Michelini, you will always be one of the original Lynbrook Kindergarten Center owls. And whereas the Lynbrook Board of Education extends a heartfelt thank you to Mrs. Michelini for her commitment to Lynbrook Public Schools and wishes her a happy and healthy retirement. Now, therefore, the Board of Education hereby accepts Andrea Michelini's resignation, reluctantly, for the purposes of retirement effective January 26, 2024.
I've never spoken about a retirement ever, just so you know. It's the board's thing. Just going to embarrass you a little bit more. So this is the first time I've commented on a retirement. So we all know that all retirements are big because it's, you know, people have been with us for so long. But I just want you to think about what this woman's done for this district. When you think as secretary and person at the KC, that means that she was the first face that every family in this district met. The first, and everyone. I mean, we're talking about everyone since the day that center opened. So when you see little Brian Donaldson running around here as a teacher now, she greeted him for that thing. So, you know, it's just hard to, and when, you know, we say what a special place it is. So we're about to launch a process tonight, and we're going to be talking about the profile of the owl. And I can think of no better person to present to you as the profile of the owl than Andrea Michelini. Is that on, or is that just okay? I am going to ask you guys to run the thing when I say. So, as you know, one of the board goals established for this year was to start a planning process called the Profile of the Owl. So tonight we're going to be formally kicking that off, and you'll certainly be hearing more and more about it as time goes on. And really what the Profile of the Owl process is about is to determine, like, where are we right now? What's going on? So if we're going to hit one slide. Do you have the... So when I met with the board for retreat back in July, we really started to come up with this concept. And the staff has heard me talk about this multiple times. The theme for this year is Owl Proud, and I'm happy to say the students of West End gave me a new bracelet today that I'm wearing that says Owl Proud. I see it all over the place because it's a great district, and we know it's a great district. We're so proud of our kids. Mostly, the kids are what make this place, and as I've said to parents all along, you do kids really well here in Lynbrook. But one thing that I have said to the staff throughout the beginning of my time since July is that if we want Lynbrook to stay Lynbrook, the mantra that I have given is the more that we stay the same, the more we also have to change. Because new folks are in Lynbrook now. It's a new community here in Lynbrook now. After COVID, the needs of the students are different now. And so the reason we need to launch a process to determine what we're all about has nothing to do with, I think I made a joke back on Superintendent's Conference Day, educational reformers will say, everything you did for the last 25 years was garbage. No, everything we did for the last 25 years was really good, but it's not now anymore. We have to change because the kids are changing. And if we stand still, it moves like a river, and then we fall in behind. That's what this process is about. So there were kind of 3 questions that we were talking about with the board, and we're going to unroll this tonight. So the question of who is the owl? We kind of use that expression around here, and it's kind of shorthand for us. We know that it's kids holding doors and saying please and thank you, and the owl chant every morning at the kindergarten center because he's a wise old scholar, and if you're in kindergarten center, hoot and holler, and they all hoot and holler and do all that. And that owl is constantly evolving. So the first question, we could launch and many districts have launched, and many colleges have launched, a strategic planning process and never talk about kids. They talk about organizational goals and inputs and outputs. So this process starts where it should and will end where it should with your children. Who, yes, there's a little pun there, right? Who is the owl? So we pause and we decide, let's look around. Who's in the community now? And then after we see who the owl is, we as a community, and I say that Mr. Belmont's always been big on this, that the community in this room, and we can remember, we had really fun times in this room together, right? Where we were discussing hard things, principally in that COVID period, but we kind of hung together and we had discussions and we listened to each other. Could have been heated at times, but we were here. So now, once again, I call on this community to come together, and you're going to be asked this question: what do we want that owl to know, be able to do, and be like? Not for a world that no longer exists, not for Lynbrook 1955, not for Lynbrook 1985, not for Lynbrook even 2018. Mrs. Postman, it's the class of 2037. Let that number just go into you for a little bit. These kids will be graduating, the ones that they're seeing right today will be here until 2036. What do we want the owl to know, be able to do, and be like? And it's not just the knowledge. It's also able to do things as we start to expand our programs into more technical education and more thinking and the beautiful artwork in the back. But also, I know a value to this community is who the kid is as a kid and as a person. The kids that forever are doing fundraising, that are forever reaching out and helping. That is what we want them to be like, the citizenship goal that this community has always embodied. And then once we find out who the owl is, we want them to know who we want them to be, then the real work begins. We then reflect that back into our curriculum so that we can create a product here that enables that student to leave us fully ready for, when you think about it, a class of 2036, we talk about 21st century learning, it's almost 22nd century learning that we're going to be starting to talk about here. So that's the process that we were talking about. And this is kind of a thing that many other districts have done, but we've just going to try to put our Lynbrook spin on it to say it's owldom that continues, because we all know what that means. Everyone is an owl. Todos somos bujos. We're all owls in this community. And that is what the process we're going to start tonight. So, instead of me just sitting up here and saying, oh, let me just come up with some ideas and we'll put a dartboard together and we'll come up with some basic skills that we should have the kids to know, we wanted to do it based on data. We wanted to do this based on actual science so that we're not, one thing that we could really get tempted to do is get into an echo chamber and talk to ourselves and say, gee, aren't we great? And you know what we hear back? Gee, aren't we great? How do we stay the same by changing in an echo chamber? So we are now partnering with our university next door in Rockville Center. Malloy University has agreed to shepherd this process for us. And I'm happy to say we are partnering not just with the School of Education, but also with the Schools of Arts and Sciences, because we want to do an actual statistical rendering of those 3 questions. So I'm going to turn it over to our representatives of Malloy, who are going to take us through the process that they have. So we have Liz Mandrakia and Gina Florio, who are going to take it from here. So if you wouldn't mind, take.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch and Mr. Baumont, for welcoming us here today, and the entire Lynbrook community. My name is Gina Florio, and I have the privilege of serving as the Dean of the School of Arts and Sciences at Malloy. And I'm here with my colleague, Liz Mandrakia, who's part of the team in Arts and Sciences. We are delighted to share this intro to the the profile of the owl with you. And tell you more about the research collaboration between Lynbrook Public Schools and Malloy. But before I turn this over to Liz, because she's going to do the heavy lift here, I just wanted to share my perspective with you as to why this partnership is as important for us at Malloy as it is, I hope, for you here in Lynbrook. So as you articulate who that owl is and the skills and the attributes that you want your students to have when they graduate in 2036, we recognize that those are students that may end up at our doorstep, right? So we want to make sure that we are ready for the students that are produced by this fine school district. And then also this approach to education that encompasses both content, skills, and does so in a comprehensive way that attends to social emotional learning that you do here at Lynbrook resonates deeply with the liberal arts tradition. So that's just my little pitch for why this is important to us, and Liz will share why we think this will be beneficial for you.
All right, thank you, Dr. Dean Florio, and thank you, Board, for having us here and the community as well. So I'm going to walk you through what Dr. Lynch had set up, the goals and the process for this research collaboration. But I want to start with, it's kind of rooted in what was the Portrait of a Graduate, which is a nationwide effort that a lot of school districts across the country have endeavored. And again, doing our spin on it, which is who is the profile of the owl. So what we're really going to do is we're going to connect traditional learning, which is what we are going to call throughout here content knowledge, the reading, writing, and arithmetic of education. And we're going to connect that with social and emotional learning, which you'll see is super important when we're talking about employment, when you're talking about being career and life ready. So the goals really are to identify 3 key things, 3 key tenets. So you'll see up there we have skills, mindsets, and traits. Those are the 3 things that are the core tenets of the research collab that we're going to undertake. When we talk about skills, we're talking about things like the lifelong set of skills that carry everybody through success, whether you go on to college, whether you do vocational work, whatever you do, those are the type of skills, whatever path you pursue. Employers kind of demand those essential skills, if you will. And those are things like problem solving, critical thinking. Those are the types of skills that we're talking about. Mindsets really are your attitudes. Those are the things that sort of have an impact on your everyday actions or your everyday thinking or the decision making that people will make, that students will ultimately make in their careers, in their life. Traits, what we mean by that are the personality characteristics, if you will. Kind of those are the things that drive your thoughts, drive your feelings, and actions, as you will. Things like self-esteem, confidence, honesty, curiosity. Those are the types of things we mean by traits. So, the twofold goal of this project is sort of to identify the skills, the mindsets, and traits of the Lynbrook owl. What are those things? And then to infuse them, part two, into curriculum and into the district's educational plan. And obviously to make sure that when the owl leaves the nest, that they've mastered all of these skills that are important to the community. So how are we going to do that? So what you see up here is sort of the framework that we're going to use as we set this research. And it's kind of the exploration of the unique Lynbrook profile. It's grounded in what we call 21st century skills, or what Dr. Lynch said now is turning into the 22nd century skills. And what we do is we kind of look at it as the 4 C's of learning, like critical thinking, communications, collaboration, the life skills that one needs to be successful, teamwork, resiliency, self-care, literacy skills, everything from digital literacy to financial and civic literacy. Applied knowledge, again, is content knowledge. Those are the things that you're going to teach students: reading, writing, the arts. Those are the constants in education. So we ask the question, why does this even matter? And it matters a lot. It matters because we want the students, we want our own children to be ready for any career that they choose, that they want to pursue. We want them to be ready for life and be ready participants. And it's our job to get them there. We want them to master content knowledge, but that only goes so far, because employers really demand different types of skills from students today. They have to be able to apply that knowledge and solve complex problems in the world today and in the world in the future. It's only one thing to know it, but you have to be able to actually implement it and to apply it. The other thing, also speaking towards the future, while we want them to leave and be prepared for the jobs that are kind of out there today, there's jobs that don't even exist that are going to happen in 2036. They need to be prepared for those jobs. And that's what's really critically important to really unearth and understand, or what are those social emotional learning? What are the things that you want your community, your students to take away so that they're prepared for today, but they're also prepared for tomorrow? And another reason why this is important is because employers kind of demand these types of skills in the workplace. I mean, what do they want? Teamwork. They want communication. They want decision making. They want problem solving, critical thinking. Employers demand that, and we know that from a lot of the research that we've viewed from a university perspective, that's what employers are saying. Critical thinking is just as high as knowing about math or knowing something. And interestingly enough, there's some expert sources that show that the top digital skills right now are data visualization, customer success. Social emotional learning helps you be able to lead yourself into customer success. And the top human skills right at the moment are storytelling, change management, collaboration, things that you're not going to learn necessarily from learning math. They're different types of skills, but the skills that are super important to employers. So I'm going to walk you through the process. It's kind of involves, it's kind of a 3-step process, if you will, that we're going to do, that involves surveying the community, analyzing and sharing data, and then kind of creating the profile that gets ultimately adopted by the district and infused into the curriculum. So the survey, the first thing, the survey is going to include the entire Lynbrook community, all of the constituents from the board down to the kindergarten center, to the parents, to your local business partners. The entire Lynbrook community needs to have a stake in this process and needs to have a voice and needs to be heard, because everybody's going to come at this from a different perspective. But that's good, and that's actually what you want to be able to do. So we're going to take this from a qualitative and a quantitative research approach. So the first thing that we're going to do would be a qualitative approach, which is sort of listening, observing, hearing the different points of view and the different perspectives on what's important to the community. And obviously that'll be done through small focus groups, through some larger listening sessions, and then we sort of hear what everybody said and take that into consideration. And then what we do is synthesize that data and then use it to infuse it into an online survey that's a quantitative survey. And then that survey gets sent out online to the entire community. It will dig a little bit deeper in terms of the feedback and the learning that we hear from the initial sessions. And what that's going to allow us to do is sort of quantify the findings and really understand the scale of what somebody thinks, because you're going to hear a lot of critical thinking's important, but you need to drill down and really understand what critical thinking means to Lynbrook, or what communication means to Lynbrook, or what being a good citizen means to Lynbrook. So the quantitative piece will allow some additional feedback and, again, quantify the scale of those findings across the community. So then step 2 is that our team in School of Education, Human Services, School of Arts and Sciences will work together to sort of sift through the qualitative work, sift through the quantitative study, and put together research and recommendations as to what we see bubble up as the top skills and the top profile, or the top way that your OWL should march through their K-12 years here. Third step is we would come back, we would share the findings with the entire community, have some dialogue, and we will have different ways of having dialogue within the community. And then we kind of, as a group, adopt, and these are the top 6 to 7 skills. And then we create literally a visualization or an infographic kind of showing that can be used throughout the district. Okay, the methodology and the timeline. So it's kind of like over 3 phases, if you will. And we've put the timeline in here. Obviously, these are sort of estimated timelines, but on or about November through January, we would conduct focus groups and larger listening. And secondly, we would elicit some self-testimonials. We would provide some prompts and some questions where folks could literally, answer those prompts on their cell phone and then send a video to a Dropbox so that we'd be able to sort of hear what the community says on a larger scale. We would implement a Jamboard, and the Jamboard would allow folks to input asynchronously, so it kind of opens up to a wider audience. And then we would review at the end of this process all of the qualitative data from all of these sessions, and then take that, and that's going to inform the writing of the actual online quantitative survey instrument. Okay, phase 2 would be the quantitative study. Somewhere between February and March, we would implement it, email it to all of the constituents, and we would then analyze, understand the data, be able to filter it and understand what one group versus another group might think, and come back with recommendations and key insights to the entire community and say, here's what we found, here's what we heard everybody say, and here's what we think are the most critical things for you to think through. And then phase 3 would literally be the result report, sharing with the community, and developing the graphic, infographic that really visualizes who is a Lynbrook OWL. And then from there, all of those findings and the research and the recommendations, once we adopt those skills, visualize who the Lynbrook OWL is, we would then turn it back to you guys to take it from 2025 and beyond. So I don't know if Dr. Lynch, if you want to elaborate on that, or if anybody has any questions, or.
I mean, that is the important part, because we could be in an echo chamber and just come up with a profile that goes nowhere, but that has to have an impact on curriculum. It has to change what we're doing here. So it starts with professional development, and that becomes one of the most key parts, because if the staff is not on board, the entire staff is not on board, we're going to move nothing. So we need to envision new ways of doing professional development, certainly in collaboration with our teachers, our admins, and the staff in general. And I'm happy to say many of the discussions have already begun. We revisit what we're already doing through curriculum, and we kind of say, all right, here's what we're doing already, here's where we can infuse some of that. One of the things I'm very excited about, create new learning opportunities. You realize we're flying drones on the second floor of this building right now. You realize that we have a brand new music theory class in the corner right now. You realize that I just saw woodworking, pictures of woodworking that Mr. Dusman is doing with the kids in the back, where they just created these awesome stools. That's we're also doing AP calculus. We're also doing business law. If this is not an evolving curriculum that is able to keep up with the skills that are needed, what are we doing for the kids? We're putting them out to in the world to be eaten and not be employed. Whereas if we can give that competitive edge to our kids to get into college or trades or military service or another type of service, then we've done our job and we hand them off to that. So we are already doing that evolution, but I think this will inform that evolution even better. Who's more important than our parents? You are the partners. You entrust your kids with us every day. So we partner with you, and I'm very happy. So I'm going to advertise. So we're going to launch our very first parent university next week. And PTA is doing that online. There's going to actually be, it's something you can sign up for. I think you can win a $50 gift certificate if you sign up now. And this is going to be it's a very important topic on nutrition and body image. And that's going to be something that you can literally sit in your living room and learn about. So that's kind of an exciting new way that PTA is reinventing itself. And we're going to continue to reinvent. And then finally, outreach to the larger community. We don't just live in a bubble. We have businesses, we have a village, we have various community members, and we need to become part of that. So that's really the work. When you guys leave, we take it from there. So does the board have any questions for our folks?
So, in talking about the entire character of the life skills section, would that include making sure when students leave, in critical thinking, of course, I think a big part of that also is the ability to self-advocate, to speak well. Would that also include understanding what an interview involves, making eye contact, shaking hands? That would all be incorporated into life skills.
100%, yeah.
That was my biggest issue.
It just makes me think of like a stronger alumni connection as well, incorporating that somehow into this.
Yeah, that actually was one of our recommendations, was to also have, literally to have staff, board, administrators, faculty, students, parents, business community, alumni. Am I missing somebody? And if I'm missing somebody, we would include them, because like I said earlier, every voice needs to be heard and filtered in the qualitative work, because there's a lot you could do with that anyway, and then you quantify it and just understand the scale of it. So you're going to hear a lot of folks maybe say critical thinking, but drill down, what does that actually mean to the district, and what does that mean to everybody? And does 50% of the folks think that that's important, or only 10% of the folks think that's important? And so some of that will come into play when you actually adopt and drill down to your top. Again, I'm saying 6 or 7, that number is sort of fluid, but it's, you're not going to want a list of 25 top things, but you're probably going to want 6 or 7 top things. So, yeah.
So first of all, thanks for the presentation. It was really informative and interesting. One of the first, I think the first step of the 3 steps you talked about was surveying the community and gathering information.
Right.
how do you ensure that you're getting a good cross-section of the community? Because one of the things I've always seen is when we put out surveys and we do all these polls of the community, you get the same people tend to respond, whether it's people who are active in the PTA, people who have kids in the high school and elementary school. How do you really, what methods do you have to ensure that you're actually getting as broad of a sampling as possible? Because I think the broader the sample, the more useful the data is, obviously.
So that's why there's a two-prong approach to this, the qualitative and the quantitative piece of it. But you'll see in the qualitative piece of this, we baked in a lot of different methodologies. One being small focus groups, so we will work with your administrators to identify which groups we want to meet with, like probably 10 folks, just 10 people in a small group, because sometimes the dynamics of small groups and large groups are very different. Large groups, sometimes you only hear a few voices in large groups. And sometimes in smaller groups, you really do get more of a cross-section. So we would employ two of those different methodologies. The Jamboard is really an opportunity to stay up for a long period of time and allow folks to go onto it more than once and leave thoughts to prompts that we'll actually put on there. So that, I think, opens up it for everybody in the community to do. We can have some of these groups be online as well. And then the quantitative piece of it, would be sent email to everybody, every one of the constituencies, most likely with reminders, please don't forget to fill this out, kind of a thing, so that we can hopefully hear from a larger percentage. And it would be an instrument that wouldn't be so, such an obstacle for people to fill out. You want to make it like 100 questions, but you're going to make it so that it's a quick 10-minute, 5-minute, 10-minute survey for them. So I think the different modalities and the different ways will help us to reach those different perspectives. And then obviously, with your help of, encouraging and supporting it throughout the district, hopefully folks will be excited about it and want to have a stake in the future of what happens within the curriculum and the district.
Are you also going to be reaching out to the teachers within the district? Because I think a lot of the teachers
Absolutely.
in the district have been here a long time. Many came through the Lynbrook schools themselves, and they may have valuable insight to give as well.
We are absolutely going to have groups with faculty and administrators, Board of Education, every single one of your constituencies we will reach in a different way from a qualitative perspective. And again, and also the adding the self-testimonials into the mix. Not everybody can be at a board meeting. Not everybody, people work, people have different schedules. So setting up something like that where folks can be handed, here's some questions, here's some prompts, just tape yourself on an iPhone if you can and send it to us, send us the video. Again, that's not going to work for some people either. They might find that cumbersome, which is why there will be multiple modalities and multiple opportunities to sort of reach out for that qualitative work. Make sense?
Well, thank you so much
You're
for
up.
coming tonight.
you're
I know we've already booked our first appointment. So the
Yes.
December
December
13th, there's a PTA council meeting. So we'll be hearing from that group. And then we're going to hopefully just continue the process and we'll
Absolutely.
be reporting back regularly to the board. So we thank you so much for
All right.
coming tonight.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Also at this time, Mr. Michelini, I apologize. I thought you probably wanted to hear a little bit about that, but those who are here for Mr. Michelini's retirement, please go out and enjoy your evening and the rest of your night.
Thank you.
Mr. Sorosi, Matt, can you come up for a sec? Well, if one presentation wasn't enough, we're going to close this meeting. We're going to open up a public hearing now to convene a hearing on the proposed tax exemptions.
Good evening, everyone. I'm on. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, excellent. All right, so we are here to discuss this evening the low-income senior and disabled exemption that was put into place by Nassau County last year. I know there was a conversation last year here, similar conversations in the district I was at prior to this, and there were some questions last year, which is why I understand Lynbrook here did not adopt the resolution. There was not enough information presented to the school community by Nassau County in order to make an informed decision on whether or not to adopt this modified exemption. So we're going to go through. Currently, there is the board had previously adopted the exemption for low-income seniors. There was a cap, an income cap there set at $37,999. That is in effect. The district did not opt out of any exemptions. There's some of the stories that I've heard in the community. The district just did not opt into the new thresholds because there was not enough information presented. So the new thresholds were raised up to a maximum of $58,399 to qualify for the low-income exemption. And as I said, the county did not provide sufficient information. I was on a call with my quadrant this morning. Every district that was on that quadrant call, the other business officials, none of them had adopted this exemption previously either. So the amended statutes allow for districts to authorize exemptions up to 50% of the school district taxes for individuals who earn $50,000 per year or less. And then there are amendments that allow districts to adopt thresholds above $50,000 with a decreasing graduated scale, lowering that exemption from 45% down to 5%, depending on resident income. So this is the current exemption as we discussed. I'm not going to read through this, but the presentation will be online if anyone wants to read this in more detail tomorrow. Currently, according to Nassau County, the exemption is claimed by 104 households within the Lynbrook district. There are another 23 households, according to Nassau County, that would qualify to receive the exemptions with the new thresholds. And in order to participate in this exemption for the 24-25 tax roll, so we can't make any changes for the current 23-24 tax year. But in order to qualify for the exemption for 24-25, the board would have to take action by January 2nd of 2024. So these are the current thresholds for the existing low-income senior exemption. Won't go into too much detail here. Again, you can look at these on the website because what we're looking at this evening are the thresholds, the new thresholds, not only for low-income seniors, but also for low-income individuals with disabilities. And so, again, the way this is laid out, the board can adopt only the $50,000 threshold or each of the different thresholds identified in those rectangular boxes there. In terms of the potential impact, these are the numbers that we received from Nassau County. This is how we were able to reach the calculations this evening. As you can see, Class 1 properties, for those who may not be familiar, are single-family homes. Class 2 properties are multifamily homes. So this is condos, apartment buildings, and things of that nature. So at the county level, the information we received was that there's an exemption amounting to 18,301 units for Class 1 properties at the county level. At the district level, it's only 14,382, which indicates that there's approximate taxable value of 3,919 that of people who would qualify for the exemption if the district were to adopt the new thresholds. In terms of the potential impact to the tax rate, if the district were to adopt the full exemption with all of the thresholds that are presented, the increase in the tax rate would be 0.20% for Class 1 and 0.06% for Class 2. And what that means in terms of the average taxable, the property with the average taxable value would be an increase, again, of 0.2%, or approximately $21.63 for Class 1 properties, $52.81 for Class 2 properties. Just keeping in mind, these are all based on current year values. It's the best information we have at the time. This information will, in all likelihood, change for 24-25, but in terms of making an assessment right now in order to adopt these, the new thresholds, this is the best information we have. So essentially for most, your average single family home, it would be an increase of $21.63. So the question before the board is, shall the board adopt the resolution granting the new income levels for the senior citizen and persons with disabilities and limited income exemptions? Any questions from the board?
Just to try to take all that in, I was more a liberal arts guy than a STEM guy. So in essence, the threshold before was at 40,000. So what the county did was they moved it up to 50. So now those between that area would now be able to qualify.
Yes.
Okay. I'm good with that.
Okay.
Thank you.
So there's part two. Because we know, Bill, you love a good presentation, so I want to give you your money's worth tonight. Second part of this exemption is there's a provision in the statute that allows for this exemption to be granted for residents who have school-aged children within the home. So the exemption of it, in and of itself applies to resident, low-income seniors, low-income individuals with disabilities, but it does not include residences where there are school-aged children attending the public schools. The board can adopt the exemption that would apply to those residencies. There's a little bit of I would say it's a little onerous standard that would have to be satisfied, both onerous, I think, for the resident and for the school district to make this analysis, that the resident would have to provide satisfactory proof that the child was not brought into the residence in whole or substantial part for the purpose of attending particular school within the district. So the question then before the board is, does the board want to adopt this additional exemption?
Well, notwithstanding the difficulty in even trying to engage in that onerous task, I see no need for any exemption. Anyone else on the board? No. There you go.
Okay, excellent. And that's it, no more questions. Thank you very much.
So seeing that the board all agree, we do have to do the resolution. Resolution 2311G34, whereas pursuant to and in accordance with the provisions of sections 467 and 459C of the real property tax law, the Board of Education is authorized to adopt tax exemptions for real property owned by persons 65 years of age and over, and persons with disabilities and limited income, respectively, who meet the maximum income eligibility level set forth in the said statutes. And whereas by virtue of the adoption of Chapter 488 of the laws of 2022, then existing maximum income eligibility levels were authorized to be increased for both said exemptions by resolution, and whereas in accordance with the further provisions of said statutes, the Board of Education has conducted a public hearing to solicit input regarding the desirability of increasing the maximum income eligibility levels, has now authorized and has determined that such action is in the best interest of the district and its community. Now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Education hereby grants tax exemption for school purposes beginning with the 24-25 tax year for the real property owned by persons 65 years of age or over, and by persons with disabilities and limited incomes in accordance with the provisions of Section 467 and 459C of the real property tax law, in accordance with the income levels referenced in the presentation. May I have a motion to adopt the resolution? Mrs. Dinino, second. Mr. Plesky, all in favor? Thank you. We'll now close the public hearing and reconvene our regular meeting. Moving on to old business, we have nothing this evening. Yeah, yep. No, I know, I got it, folks. So it's after resolution. All right, so moving on to report from trustees. Mr. Plesky, anything from facilities?
Yes. The facilities committee met and we reviewed projects. We're at the preliminary stages. We're looking at a 5-year plan and listing our priorities.
Ms. Aragona, PTA liaison report.
I'm just going to follow up a little with what Dr. Lynch mentioned before, that Lynbrook Council of PTAs is having their Apparent University about nutrition and body image. The presentation brings awareness to our language, dialogues, and conversations around food, body, and how it affects our children. The presentation is November 16th at 7 p.m. The presentation is completely virtual, so flyers with the link to join the presentation have been posted on social media, and emails will also be going out by individual schools, so look out for that.
Thank you, Ms. Aragona. Anything else from the board? Dr. Lynch, superintendent's report.
T-minus 1 day. So Project Liftoff, this is the last time you're going to hear anyone talk about Project Liftoff, and no Major Tom. So we're all excited. The reason Mr. Murray is not here right now is because he is in Florida. And our contingency is down there with Mr. Vasalico, Mr. V, and Dr. Burak are down there to witness the takeoff. So tomorrow our project will be lifting off at 8:26 p.m. It'll be on a SpaceX rocket. So those of you that don't know, a Lynbrook designed experiment is blasting off into space tomorrow, so that an experiment that was designed by Lynbrook students can be tested in actual zero gravity. Pretty cool. It is Mr. Vasalico has told me that he is going to. Brendan, you've set up on our YouTube channel. So if you simply go to where you are watching this meeting right now, you can go there and there'll be a Project Liftoff. Mr. Vasalico will be live streaming it. He did say, hopefully. He does not know how Wi-Fi or cellular data is going to be at the launch site, but if he can, he's certainly going to be recording it. So it's either going to be live streamed tomorrow, and if you don't see it, then he will be able to post it the next day. So that's where they are right now, and that is just a literally out of this world experience for this community. Thank you, Dr. Berman. There had to be one person laughing. We had a great superintendent's conference day yesterday. I want to thank Mrs. Kirby and the Lynbrook Teachers Center for hosting it. We saw a great video as to why people are so OWL proud, and people spoke from their own experience. We also had some great workshops on CPR, digital storyboards, Canva, writing, ChatGPT, trauma-informed instruction, lots of tech talk, and Turnitin and Sounds Right, and lots of other really exciting things. Some people went off-site, and again, that whole idea of professional development, so it was a really great day yesterday. And I'm now going to hand it over to Dr. Belekas.
Thank you, Dr. Lynch. In addition to our continued relationship with Freiburg JCC, we've added a new partner this year with our pre-K program, Tiny Tykes. We have been working closely with both directors and staff to align their curriculum and instruction in the pre-K to ours. The entire instructional staff, actually, from both preschools came and met with Dr. Lynch, Mrs. Curran, and me to discuss math, ELA, and SEL, social emotional learning standards, and how the students' progress in pre-K will be monitored using the same assessments as the district uses right now, and also some additional pre-K specific probes. To support their efforts, our consultants that have been working with us on our literacy program have offered professional development and modeling to the pre-Ks, and we also have sent our special education staff, E&L staff, our elementary and central office administrators have all visited to each of the pre-Ks to tailor the support to our specific students' needs and to promote continuity of instruction. Thank you.
Can I ask a question? Now that we have the pre-K program, are we seeing some students still that are not attending pre-K, and the gap now, I would imagine, is greater than before? And what are we doing for those students that are not attending pre-K to lessen that gap?
So there are students who are not attending pre-K. You know, approximately, I would say about 60% are going, and you know the others are not. You know, the gap though is being filled in mostly by the children. And one of the things that we find, and this is one of the awesome things, so we actually spoke with the literacy consultants from Sounds Right about that exact problem, and asked them, you know, how has this been addressed worldwide? And they said, well, one of the things you're going to see is that the pre-K students, that, you know, the ones that went through the pre-K program will become the best teachers within the first month of school for the kids that did not go. And you do see it, and the little kids are awesome, and they do wrap their arm around their fellow children, and they love to be teacher. So they actually will help them learn the routine very quickly, and there is benefit to that. Of course, we have kids that move in all the time. You know, the good thing about it in the kindergarten program is that, you know, there are enough other kids in that same boat. You know, when we have kids that move in, you know, later on in their career, they do have the same kind of lift to come in when you're coming in cold and you haven't been instructed the same way. But, you know, back to the idea of the Lynbrook community, our kids are very good to each other. And we've seen it with the older kids, too, where they take in those children that learned a different way from another district or another state, and they bring them right into the fold. So, yes, it's a concern, but, you know, it has been addressed. And it's one of those things, too, why the data collection is so important, both at pre-K and in kindergarten all the way through the system, is that we can pinpoint exactly where those deficits are. You know, with the youngest children, I know you're very familiar with, you know, early education. We will target which sounds they're up to. You know, are they at blending yet? You know, we'll be able to target exactly where they're at and meet them there. So whether or not they need tier 1 or tier 2, tier 3 supports, all of that's being determined by the data points that we're collecting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
In capital projects, Mr. Press?
Good evening again. Just to give an update on our capital projects, the big work is largely done. The projects that we had underway, we're just trying to wrap up the final steps. Up at North, the turf field is in. It's beautiful. There's a few remaining pieces. The lights are not yet functional. A transformer was delivered. It just needs to be hooked up, and I think they just plug it in and things work. No, that's not how it works. So we do have the transformer. We do hope to have that up and running very, very shortly, so folks can play under the lights. At South Middle, there's some work that was done there. There was a bunch of work that was intended to be done on the back in the parking lot area. Supposed to be done on weekends. Weather has not been great on the weekend, so that work has not been done yet. So when we get a good weekend, we're going to try to get that in, although the weather is getting colder, so some of that work in terms of the parking lot may not happen until the spring. Marion Street, the cafeteria is coming together little pieces at a time. We have all the equipment there for the kitchen part of things. Windows came in and were installed on Tuesday. We're still waiting on a few additional pieces to get done before we can say that is a done deal. The turf field, which is part of the project, is set to be the work on the turf field should start on Monday of next week. So that's exciting. We'll get a new turf field over there, or not a new turf field, but a replacement turf field. In terms of the other capital projects that we're just waiting for state approval, those things are still up at the state. We are still waiting for approval. That's the Marion Street and the West End door, classroom door replacements, the high school elevator, and the South Middle bathroom. In terms of the door project, we are going through the exciting process of selecting door locks for those doors. Not as simple a process as one might think. Door locks these days are not just locks, they tie into access control and network systems and things of that nature. So we are talking to a few different vendors on that. And I'm going to segue into the, just kind of give a quick food service update in terms of the elementary school lunch program. I'd like to say it's just going smooth as silk. It is not. We acknowledge that. We are trying to resolve issues as best we can as they come up. So do encourage folks, if you're having issues, let me know. I hesitate to say let the principals know. I'm sure that's already happening at the elementary schools. And we do hope to launch hot lunch in December. December 1st is the target date. We're still trying to work out the logistics on how we transport the hot food and keep it nice and fresh for all of the lunch periods. So we've been in communication with Whitson's and having conversations with them about that. But we hope to successfully launch that on December 1st. And that's all I have unless anyone has any questions.
For the elementary lunch food program, all the equipment is here though, so it's just a matter of transportation, or are we still, I know at one point we were waiting for some of the equipment for the hot.
Yeah, so we were waiting on that came in probably within the last couple of weeks. The serving table, so there was a hot and a cold serving table, and then we had to have the electricians finish the work to get the electric to those serving stations. So they are in place.
Okay.
There. Yeah, we started having conversations with Whitson's about the hot lunch, but we didn't want to pull the trigger before we knew the equipment was in, because there was a delay on the Marion Street equipment. So every other school had it, but Marion Street didn't. So, and then the conversation we had was, do we launch before Thanksgiving or after Thanksgiving? And we just decided just to make sure we can get all the logistics of transporting hot food from the middle schools to the elementary schools, and then keep it, the food, so that it wouldn't spoil within the period of time that it would be waiting for the kids to come in. So we're kind of tweaking that, but we are looking forward to getting the hot lunch up and running. We're hearing from parents that there are some kids that just don't like, sandwiches and salads, but once we start having chicken nuggets and pizza, that they're gonna start buying the lunch. So the numbers have been decent at West End and Marion. Less so at Waverly and the kindergarten center. So we're trying to work with Whitson's to try to see what we can do to increase participation.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Back
Dr.
to you,
Lynch.
Mr. Belmont.
This time we'll move to public comment. Anyone that to address the board, please come to the microphone, identify yourself, and indicate if you live in or out of district.
Evening, everybody. Kim Cyprian here tonight. Just to follow up again in regards to the potential of a plan for the late bus service. I did want to come to you with some facts. I know, Ms. Danino, you asked some questions in the last meeting about specifics and numbers. Dr. Berman was so kind to provide me with additional information. So to answer your questions, there's currently 19 schools, okay, that students attend that are non-public. It's interesting, though, on the list, Dr. Berman, Nassau Community College is listed as a school, but we provide transportation. So I find that interesting, unless I'm wrong, but I did have a child that attended there, and we did have transportation. So I find that interesting. So of the 18 schools, we have 109 students from Lynbrook that attend non-public schools. Of the 109 students, 44 of those students attend one school. 44. That's 40% of your children. That's Kellenberg. The next school in line is Chaminade. 17 students currently attend Chaminade. That's about 15.5%. Past that, the other 3 schools have 8 students in attendance. 14 of your 19 schools have less than 5 students attending, many of them with 1 or 2. Again, I'm providing you these numbers because as you've addressed tonight, things are done based on need. In a school budget every year, if I'm not mistaken, we have 7 schools in our district. I don't believe every single one of those schools gets everything that they need. The priority goes to those that have the most need. So again, I come here to ask you to think about coming up with a plan to satisfy some of the need. Maybe the students that have the most need. We talked about change, Dr. Lynch. Your conversation was fantastic. We have to evolve. We have to change. We have to provide our students what they need. Since COVID, you stated it yourself. I said it in the first time I presented, social and emotional well-being. Our students need to be able to work with their peers. You're taking on Malloy to come and help you find out what does everybody need, okay? Our students need to be with their peers. They need to learn in environments outside of school, clubs, sports, activities. I'm asking you to listen to these numbers. If you were to provide bus service only to the top 2 schools in most need, you could be proud enough to say that yes, you could not help all of your students, but you were able to provide 56% of your students, those that had the greatest need, a service to allow them to work to build those life skills that we need, that we may not be able to teach our students at home. They don't learn everything from a classroom. They learn from their peers. I come to you today also with my daughter, Caitlin, because I think it's important that you hear the perspective. I'm sure you're all tired of hearing from me. Hear it from a child. What does it mean to her to have this late bus service?
Hi, my name is Caitlin Cyprian. I'm in the 8th grade and I attend Kellenberg Memorial. I know that not having a bus service doesn't only affect me, but it affects lots of my other peers that are from the Lynbrook School District. I do know that for my other friends from Kellenberg, that it's a lot easier for them to attend these new clubs and extra help schedules because they have these late bus services. For me, it's harder to attend those because I have to ask my mom when she's available to pick me up from these schools. I have to ask her days in advance just to know if I am allowed to go to extra help this day and if she can pick me up this day.
Can you imagine? The child has to ask, can I go to extra help? Can I go? That is insane.
I also know that with these few days that I'm able to attend extra help, it's also harder for me to attend these clubs where I can talk to my peers and make new friends. Making new friends is harder, and it's also better to gain new friendships in different grades so you can have more variety in friendships. So you have new people to sit with at lunch and not maybe just the same people. It's good to have varieties and options.
Thank you. Thank you. I believe there's some other parents and other students that would like to give you some more information.
Good evening. My name is Emma Wagner. I live on Lenox Avenue in Lynbrook. I am in 8th grade, and this is my 3rd year attending the Kellenberg Latin School. Since I've started at Kellenberg, there has been no late bus, which has led me to miss many opportunities, both socially and academically. Both of my parents work full-time, and I have 2 younger siblings. Therefore, there have been many times I was unable to stay after school because I didn't have a late bus. All my friends are able to stay for after-school activities, sports, extra help, clubs, and events, thanks to their districts providing late buses. These districts that provide late buses include East Rockaway, Malvern, Rockville Center, Franklin Square, Long Beach, and Massapequa, just to name a few. Missing out on certain opportunities just because I don't have a late bus has been upsetting. These after-school opportunities would help me connect with my peers and enhance my middle school experience. I am here tonight to respectfully request that you give serious thought and consideration to the positive impact providing a late bus can have on Lynbrook kids like me. Thank you for your time tonight.
This on? Ladies, thank you for speaking. You know, as I mentioned earlier, you know, it's always been a big issue for me for life skills, for self-advocating. So you both spoke very well, very articulate, and very comfortably. So excellent job on that. I know Cipriano's going to keep coming back here and debate numbers with me. Can we put this on just for budget so we can have more of a discourse on that? I'll just change. I think the point you're trying to make is I wouldn't say that the ones in the top two have the greatest need, but I know not the greatest any less, but the idea is you're advocating and asking if we're going to do it, find a way to do a certain percentage of them. And I know last year during budget we talked about numbers and cutoff in schools, but let's look at that again and see what the numbers come up.
Sure, we'll
again
work that up and we'll.
Yeah, that was one other question that I had. Can I ask, when would be the time frame where this would be discussed, or there would be a working session, or even a discussion to come upon?
The budget, do you know when the budget work session is? It's generally in late February or early March. Early, so there'll be a Wednesday night. It's listed on the calendar as a budget work session.
March 6th.
Thank you, March 6th. So what will happen now, the board's just instructed us so that we're about to start the budget preparation process. So Dr. Berman prepares a budget for board review that will come to them on that night of March 6th. And then as we did last year, we actually costed out the various scenarios based it on the numbers you just said were exactly how we presented to the board. We'll work up new numbers based on that, and then the board will have a discussion that night.
Thank you.
I just want to support
If you could
the
just
crew
identify.
here. My name's Eileen Saporito. I've been a Lynbrook resident for 30 years. I have 4 kids, 3 of which are at Kellenberg. 1 is on the way eventually, who attends Catholic school here. Going to Catholic school has been a personal decision. I've went to Catholic school my whole life, right through college, so just something I always knew what my kids would do. But last couple of years, I've been at Kellenberg every single day, picking up my kids for late activities. I used to work in Manhattan, and I'd have to leave at 3:30 to get up there for 5:15 to get a late bus. Luckily, I have a good, networking, so parents do stick together, but sometimes kids going from Kellenberg somewhere else, so it doesn't always work out. My husband and I work full-time. We work beyond 40 hours, so it's very hard having the little one at home, having a babysitter to watch her, so it's costing us time and money. Round trip is an hour, and that's without traffic. So when there's traffic, it could be 5 hours a week if you're up there 3 to 5 days. So it's a time versus, inconvenience issue. I've been calling for years. My neighbor always warned me there's no late bus, and I always hear the board doesn't like people complaining about the late bus. And I've called over the years, and I've just asked one question: how do you get a late bus? And the answer's always been the board voted no. We've reviewed this over the years, and it's too costly. There's not enough kids, or it's not in the budget. So to date, I have never seen anything providing any study. So my question is, has there been a cost study? What's the number of kids that can make this happen? What's the number of kids for a break-even perspective?
So I think your neighbor who is giving you the information last year, in the last 2 years, it's been extensively discussed at the budget hearings, which are not overly well attended, but they are videoed and recorded. So
Right,
all
but-
those numbers and all those studies, all that took place over the last 2 years extensively. And Dr. Berman, I guess, when she spoke, had explained.
Right, when I first moved in, so that was years
Oh,
ago.
historically,
that
yes.
There was never a late bus.
So you're happy
I
with the
know it's-
progress?
I guess, given a year, but, so, just curious, what's been explored, and so, to your point, if it's been explored, that's great, let's just keep at it and see. I could tell you right now, the East Rockaway bus, I know plenty of people, comes back every day half empty, at least half empty. Malvern, half empty. So maybe we can even collaborate with them. And I'll be honest with you, a lot of kids hop other buses because they need to get home and they're stuck. I mean, that's a liability issue, and that's not just Lynbrook, that's across the board. So this is how desperate these kids are to get on a late bus to come down. And so, you know, I look at this tax bill, and this big red number, this big red thing is coming to this school. So my money's here. I'm just asking you to re-express the money and put it towards something that, you know, like Kim said, those numbers are pretty high, and I don't think they're gonna get lower. I think the Catholic schools are getting an influx for whatever reason, COVID and whatnot. So, you know, years ago, saying there weren't enough kids, I could agree, but I think now there's just numbers are gonna go higher and higher. So I'm just trying to support everybody, and I appreciate it.
Thank you for your comments. Seeing no more questions from the community, we'll move on with the meeting. Moving to superintendent's recommendations, I'd like to ask for consent agenda and resolutions 2311C2 through 2311C12, 2311, looks like 23-111, NC1 through 23-111-NC9, and 2311G1 through 2311G33. Have a motion, please. Ms. Aragona, second. Mr. Lunar, all in favor? May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda? Mrs. Danino, second. Mr. Pileski, all in favor? The next meeting of the Board of Education will be on December 13th. Everyone have a happy and healthy Thanksgiving.